Hey guys, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani. Welcome to the Beyond Wellness Radio podcast. Feel free and head over to justinhealth.com. We have all of our podcast transcriptions there, as well as video series on different health topics ranging from thyroid to hormones, ketogenic diets, and gluten. While you're there, you can also schedule a consult with myself, Dr. J, and or our colleagues and staff to help dive into any pressing health issues you really want to get to the root cause on. Again, if you enjoy the podcast, feel free and share the information with friends or family, and enjoy the show. Here, Dr. J with Evan Brand. Really excited to have a excellent podcast today. We're going to be chatting about how to investigate the root cause of your gut issues. We see lots of patients come in and they've gone to see the SIBO doc or the Candida doc or the parasite doc or the thyroid doc, and whatever the symptoms that they are dealing with, magically that issue that doc only focuses on is the problem. How coincidental, right? And so we want to talk today about having a holistic mindset, not being necessarily attached to what the diagnosis or what we think the root is, but really be focused on the outcome and the different tools we use and have to investigate and support healing. Evan, how we doing, man?
Doing good. And not to mention, too, the conventional approaches, right? Maybe before they get to the SIBO guy or to the parasite guy or to the worm guy, maybe they went to the endocrinologist first for their hormone symptoms, and then they got referred to the gastro doc, and then the gastro doc did an endoscopy or a colonoscopy or a barium x-ray scan like you did to me, and then they say, oh, you've got gastritis, and that's the only thing they can pull out of you is, hey, there's some inflammation, and then it ends there. So whether you are listening from the conventional approach or whether you have tried to go more natural, holistic approach, as you and I have talked about many times, people over specialize. And that's the problem. You and I are what I would consider very good specialists, but we also have a generalist undertone to us, meaning we're not going to get caught up in just the SIBO. We're not going to get caught up in just the parasites. It's rarely that simple.
Absolutely. It's like, imagine like you hired a handyman to come over and fix something in your home, and the handyman just takes his Phillips flathead screwdriver and is like, or I'm sorry, not but let's say a regular Phillips screwdriver, and just says, hey, I'm going to use this Phillips screwdriver, even if it requires a nail, even if it requires a wrench or a drill. I am married or attached to this Phillips head screwdriver. And we don't want to be attached to the tool. We want to go in, know that we have a myriad of tools in our tool belt, and pick the right tool for the right job. There's a nail, I'm going to pick a hammer. Hey, there's a wrench, we're going to use something that is good for a wrench, etc. So we're picking the right tool for the job, and we are focused on the outcome, getting the results, and we're not focused on how we get that outcome, right? The vegan diet people, they're going to make it so everything is solved by a vegan diet, and that's it, right? And so we are independent of the tools that we use to get the success that we need.
Yeah, that's a great point. And a lot of this comes from just experience, but also our own personal journeys too. I mean, you know my story. You helped me through my story of having digestive issues and skin issues for decades of my life. And we looked at the H. pylori, worked on that. Then it was parasites. Then it was bacterial overgrowth. Then it was candida. Then it was mold. I mean, so I went through the ringer personally. And I think personal suffering, but of course, clinical experience really gives you the non-biased approach. And I think that's what you need, because if you're trying to just sell a book or you're trying to just get clients in from a book you wrote on SIBO, as you said, everything's going to be SIBO. And if somebody is not in that box, you're going to still give them the same treatment. You're not going to get them better. And then they're going to move on. And the average person who comes to us has already been to 5, sometimes 10 or 15 practitioners. So it's not surprising when we look at what they've done and they've still missed some of the pieces. So why don't we talk now about some of the pieces? Like when we're looking at someone with gut issues, what are the pieces we're trying to lay out on the table in front of us to gather enough information to find what's truly going on, and then of course how to fix it?
100%. So the first thing that I think is essential is you got to do a good history. You have to understand how everything unwound, right? And so when you look at most people's history, a lot of times there's poor diet. There's usually some stress issues, a lot of inflammation compounded by junky fats, poor digestion in general, not being able to break down proteins and fats, lots of refined sugar, usually processed grains, excess omega-6 or trans fats. And these things just continue to put the body in a pro-inflammatory state. And what that means is when you become overall inflamed at a higher level, your body starts to break down faster than it can heal. And so the goal of being anti-inflammatory right, is restricting a lot of the foods that drive inflammation so your body can heal faster than you break down. So there's always this net buildup versus net breakdown. And so when you're breaking down over time, what starts to happen is, just as you know, from a joint standpoint, you're starting to feel a little bit inflamed, stiff. From a mood standpoint, you may have anxiety, depression. Obviously, fatigue starting to creep in because the more inflamed you are, your body's having to deal and allocate adrenal resources to deal with the inflammation, to deal with the stress, where normally those adrenal resources would help with energy and good mood and good circadian rhythm. And so, of course, then that starts putting stress on the thyroid. Then you start having mood issues, cold temperature, hair loss. And then, of course, the more stressed you are, the more that starts to suppress your body's ability to digest optimally. So, HCl levels, enzyme levels, maybe bile salt levels start dropping. You start to have a harder time breaking down protein, breaking down fat. You may start getting more burpy or gassy or more flatulence. Now your motility starts to go south, typically more on the constipated side, but you can still have more diarrhea too. And then your absorption starts to go south. And when that starts to go south, now you start to have a bottleneck in all the nutrients, whether it's B vitamins, fat soluble vitamins like A, D, E, K, whether it's minerals or amino acids to help your brain chemicals or cholesterol to help your hormones. Those building blocks start dropping, and then those pathways start getting shorted, and they don't have the resources to run optimally. And when we don't have the resources, more symptoms start to happen. And of course, this kind of compounding this whole journey is the immune system starts to drop. And then when the immune system starts to get weaker, now bugs can start coming into the situation, whether it's parasites or yeast overgrowth or SIBO or bacterial overgrowth or H. pylori. And again, we don't have to be married to which one or which system is the one, right? But we have to look at things objectively. And I think it was Dr. Kalish said this to me over a decade ago. It's kind of a good line. He said, patients have the right to have more than one issue, more than one infection, more than one hormonal imbalance going on at the same time. So don't get married to one thing because you have the right to have lots of things going on.
Yeah, yeah. And you illustrated beautifully just the constellation of symptoms that can happen. So if someone is coming in with gut symptoms, that's usually the tip of the iceberg. Underneath that iceberg, just like your poster you got right there. If we put the tip of the iceberg is gut, under the water there, it could be the anxiety, the depression, the fatigue, the low sex drive, the cold hands, the cold feet, the brain fog, the concentration issues, the memory problems, the skin issues. And so once you do a good history, you're also talking about pharmaceuticals too. What kind of like proton pump inhibitors were you on? That's a big thing. Like, were you on acid blocking medications? Were you on other things disrupting your gut? So, of course, figuring out if you're still on those medications, you're not fully going to get better if you have a ton of drugs that are causing these side effects. And then you get into the testing. Now, this is where you and I differ from other people. Some people, they're married to the SIBO test. And I don't want to speak for you. I'll ask you about this. But me personally, I think a SIBO test is a waste of time because when we look at a GI map stool test, we're going to see a more detailed breakdown of specific pathogens like strep and staph and Klebsiella and Pseudomonas. And the way I look at it is your mouth to your butt is one long tube. So if there's dysbiosis in there, identified on the stool or the urine organic acids, we could assume it's probably in the small intestine. But the protocol, the herbs that you're going to use are going to treat the whole thing. So to me, I want to hear your thought on this too. But to me, if I see positive hydrogen or methane, all I'm going to go and do and say is going to be, yep, that makes sense. But beyond that, to me, those breath tests are not really that helpful.
Yeah, I mean, a SIBO breath test is just looking, it's an indirect measurement looking at the gas created by the bugs. So methane or hydrogen gases that are created. So if we can find bugs that typically produce those gases or an imbalance in bad bugs that shouldn't be there, then we know more than likely there's something going on in that SIBO realm. It doesn't change the treatment that much because a lot of the herbs we use to knock down those bugs, that they're going to be similar, if not the same, on the SIBO side. Now, my philosophy may be a tiny bit different than yours, but I find anyone with these type of bug issues, we're running a comprehensive stool test and usually an organic acid test. And on one or two of those tests, we're going to see either the bugs, the bacteria imbalances, whether it's Citrobacter, Prevotella, Morganella, Pseudomonas, Klebsiella, or H. pylori, or parasites. We'll see these bugs elevated. If we don't, almost always we catch it on the organic acid side when we're looking at 2,3-phenylacetate or benzoate or hippurate or diarabinitol for yeast. Usually we'll catch it there. If I don't catch it on any of those tests, on the stool test or the organic acid test. Then I'll pull out a lactulose breath test. But I'd say 99% of the time, we never have to go to that far.
Okay, okay, good point. So maybe it's a 1% of the time test for you. And I guess what I would do if, let's say, we missed it, we felt like we missed it on stool and urine, I might just come in, or if sometimes if someone just has no budget to do anything, we may just look at symptoms, scan, history, and just come in with some herbs and see how they do. And a lot of times, a lot of these antimicrobials, antifungals, antiparasitic herbs, a lot of times it clears up the issue anyway. So we don't like to come in blind, but in a few rare cases, we have come in blind and we've still had good benefits. A lady just chimed in on the live chat here. My gut is not happy. Chronic constipation after using pain meds for pain and recovery from 5 back surgeries. Yeah, that's a common issue with the opiates, right? Because that's going to slow everything down. So
Yeah.
I guess the answer is eventually this person's going to have to try to get off those opiates, right? But there are maybe some brain gut motility activators we can use, right?
Yeah, of course, if you're on those opiates, you probably have had some surgeries, and surgeries mean typically anesthesia, maybe a lot of antibiotics along the way. So that's probably really screwed up the gut microflora. So first off, is you have to get to the root cause of the pain. Second thing is you have to have a good doctor to work with to taper you off those medications while you're providing anti-inflammatory support, because you need, whether it's systemic enzymes or anti-inflammatory herbs, plus that brain takes time to get rewired from the opiates because you're processing pain totally differently. Remember, opiates don't have an anti-inflammatory mechanism. They just block pain at the brain level, which isn't good, because pain's a good indication. Like if I have pain in my ankle and it's there, then I can know, okay, I shouldn't walk on it because I'm causing more damage, right? So even if I were to take ibuprofen and my pain went away, I would still want to be very careful I don't do too much on it, because I'm going to cause damage, right? So most people that are chronically inflamed on these opiates, they're just causing more and more damage, because they can't perceive the pain, they're still causing this inflammatory breakdown.
Yep, that's true. Someone else just chimed in. My gut's been destroyed by many rounds of antibiotics. Um, and that's super common. I mean, how many times have you and I seen that where someone comes
My
in after a
gosh,
round of antibiotics? I mean, that's probably one of the top 5 things we see, right? They said they're now
100%.
dealing with IBSD, so that would be diarrhea, and eating a limited vegan diet. So my first thought is, vegan diet, raw leafy greens. If you're dealing with diarrhea, vegetables are going to irritate the gut. I would push you more towards getting some good animal proteins in, even if you could only handle like a carnivore collagen, like a beef peptide protein powder, or collagen shake, maybe with some organic berries. That'd be my first thought. How would you think about this one?
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely look at reducing some of the fermentable carbohydrates, and really look at cooking and steaming and sauteing a lot of those things so it's easy to break down. But you really got to reach out to a good functional medicine doctor that can kind of help navigate you through it, because if you don't have all the digestive enzymes and acids there, it may be hard to break these things down. Also, someone chimed in about, what about vagus nerve issues? So this is kind of a classic area in functional medicine where people try to talk about things differently in a nuanced way, and they're just talking about the same thing in a different way, but people think it's a new thing, right? So when we talk about like inflammation and adrenal stress, when the more stressed you are and the more you activate the sympathetics, or the more inflamed you are, right? Guess what happens when inflammation goes up and the sympathetic nervous system goes up? The vagus nerve, or the parasympathetic nervous system, always goes down. Does that make sense? So when we talk about these things, it's implied that the vagus nerve, or the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system that helps with healing and recovery, is always going to be impaired. And so people talk about things kind of as a way to nuance themselves, make them seem different, kind of market themselves in a different way, which is fine. But the average person may get a little confused about it. And so just know that that's kind of under the same umbrella that we're talking about. We talk about the vagus nerve or the parasympathetics. It's being factored into this whole adrenal stress inflammation umbrella. I think, yeah, inflammation is the bigger umbrella, and then you can put adrenals and parasympathetic and sympathetic all under that umbrella.
Yeah, very true. Very well said. Terry chimed in. I've been experiencing constant belching, a new symptom for me. So once again, you got to get the labs run. I want to look at your organic acid, see what's going on there. Get a GI-MAP stool test run. Are you on proton pump inhibitors? Are you taking supplemental acids and enzymes? How old are you? If you're above age 40, you probably have low acid, low enzymes, maybe gut infections too. So with a stool, urine sample, good workup, you could probably resolve belching. I mean, that's
And
pretty easy
yeah,
one.
and I strongly recommend, do not get these labs on your own, because just because you get a lab, you're not going to have any of the ability to know what to do next. And that's everything, right? You got to know what the plan is next. And then typically you want to look at, like when I order a lab, it's in conjunction with, we've done A, B, C, D, E, F. And then now the lab is going to plug in at G. Does that make sense? So it's never just this is A or this is it. There's a whole bunch of sequence of things that we're doing before we get to all the data from the lab. And so when you work with someone, most people are going to have that plug in at some level in the clinical chain downstream. And so most people think, oh, this is just it. This is A. This is the whole piece of the puzzle, and it's not. So just kind of keep that in the back of your head. I know that can be a little bit confusing when you're a layperson coming in there, but it's important information. I think just start off with a lot of the foundational things first. Just kind of wrap your head around it. Don't get kind of myopic and in this tunnel vision. Oh, it has to be candida. It has to be this. Be very open-minded that it could be many different stressors, and just have that really good differential kind of diagnosis list of all the things that we're going to go and hit, and not get overly focused on one thing.
Yeah, good point. I'll also say too, I'm not saying go to your doctor who's failed you for the last 10 years and try to ask them for an organic acids test or a stool test, because even if they were able to run it, which most of the time they don't have accounts set up with the lab, so they're not going to, but even if they were able to and they run it, they're not going to know how to interpret it. They're not going to know how to make a protocol based on it. So this is a shameless plug for you and I and what we do as functional medicine practitioners. We work clinically around the world with people. So Terry's asking, where can she get the labs from? It depends. We use a couple different companies. It depends on where you live, what you got
What
going
we'll
on.
do is this. We'll put some links on the videos below. So for you and on your site and mine. So if you want to get it from us, I recommend get it from us and then work with Evan or work with myself. We're here to help you. We'll put the links below, or you can go to evanbrand.com for Evan, or Dr. J here, justinhealth.com for me. And then just to kind of highlight what you're saying, I see so many people that have some of these tests sometimes. And the first question is, walk me through what your doctor that ordered this test said about it. Did they give you a real thorough review? How much time? Oh, they just spent a minute. They just said XYZ, and it really was. I'm like, wow, you have all this information here, and yet it really isn't thoroughly addressed, I would say 90+% of the time. So it's really important when you get these tests ordered, you really want to comb through it thoroughly so you can extract as much actionable information as possible. And if your doctor doesn't have that level of skill set or information on it, that's fine. Just find someone else.
Yeah, you make a great point. I mean, so many times I know you and I both have a section on our intake form where you can like attach previous labs. I'll see 5, 10, 15, 20 labs, and it'll be from a medical doctor or a chiropractic or some other type of practitioner. I'm like, wow, they did a really good workup on you. Like, how did this go? Why are you coming to me? What was the protocol? Oh, they didn't have a protocol. I'm like, well, right, why'd they run the labs? Well, because I wanted them to. Okay, and what did they say about the labs? Oh, well, that it was not bad, but I could use a little improvement. And so they gave me an enzyme. And it's like, they gave you an enzyme. You've got 20 pathogens. You've got parasites. You've got H. pylori. You've got major gut inflammation. And the sequencing of this is important too. So even if they read a cookie cutter protocol where it says, like, take oregano oil, you might not be a good candidate for that. If you've got a bunch of gut
Correct.
inflammation, your gut's irritated, you go throw a, nuclear bomb in there, you're going to irritate your gut more. So the sequencing is important. So I guess just to highlight here what we're talking about, it's the sequencing, as you mentioned. When does the lab come in? That's not just the end all be all tool. There's other strategies you've implemented up until that point. And then when do you work in the killers? Is it right out of the gate? Do you got to settle
Never.
the gut first?
It's
Do
never,
you,
yeah.
I
It's
mean,
never. The problem is people have done, the patients come in and they've done a lot of different things. So like maybe they've tweaked their diet. And so they think, okay, I've made these diet changes, right? Whether it's enough or not is besides the point, but they think, okay, I've done these diet changes. Check, diet isn't part of the equation. So in their mind, they kind of check that off. So when they see another practitioner, they kind of have this half list of things in their mind they've checked off. And then they're like, okay, I've already worked on the diet stuff. Yep. I've already done some digestive support. So when then I lay out my plan, there's kind of like, well, I'm not going to do this because I've already done some of this, or I'm not going to do that. It's like, no, it's like if I give you a safe and the combination is 6 or 7 numbers, you don't say, well, I've spun number 33 on my other safe, therefore I don't have to do it this time around. It's like the combination has to be done in sequence together. The other analogy is cooking. If you want to crack the eggs after you bake the flour, well, that cake's going to be pretty nasty. Okay. So it's kind of the same thing. It is a sequence. And just because someone has done something before in the past, one, it may not have been all the way there, but we still have to plug that sequence back into the overall flow of things. Does that
yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I know both
You're,
of
you're smiling, so it sounds like that's something that you deal with and hear a lot.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, it's just,
It's
once
so
you
much
do it.
easier dealing with patients that have done nothing, that have no predisposition to like what's next. They're like a blank slate. Because then you can kind of come in and there's zero resistance and you can work through your flow. When people have done a lot of things and they think they've done everything in that area, it's always hard because you kind of have to convince them to redo these things over again. That can be tough.
Well, I'm just smiling because of the safe analogy. You always kill it with the analogies, and I'm also smiling because I didn't know if it was your kids or my kids screaming. I'm like, I'm like pulling my headphone out. Like, is that my kids? Is that Justin's kids? And one of the things that I hope you guys love and appreciate about us is that we're dads, we're family men at the end of the day. And so we're working, we're hustling, we're grinding with our clients, but we're implementing this stuff into our family. We're helping kids, our own personal kids. We're working with kids clinically. I've got kids that are 1 year old, 6 months old, 3 years old that are clinically working with us to get help. And so, uh, we're practicing what we're preaching with our family too. And I just want to highlight that because there's so many people out there, so many practitioners that they were so focused on medical school or their practice that they never had a chance to even start a family. You've got these mid 40s, late 40s, upper 50s practitioners out there. They have no family experience. And I think that's where you and I are different because we know when you're working on a gut protocol. Let's talk about that for a minute. When you're working on a gut protocol with a kid, and you're like, okay, we've got terrible tasting tinctures that we can try. We've got some capsules that maybe
Yep.
mom or dad can open up and put into applesauce. You and I have personally and clinically dealt with the logistics of implementing this stuff. So even if you're going to get this perfect gut protocol put together, the logistics of following it and getting your kids to take it,
Hmm.
3-year-old Johnny who doesn't want to take the Artemisia, it's like, well, how do you get that in? That's the important thing because the proper labs is a step. The proper nutrition is a proper step. The protocol is a step, but the implementation of it, and then what do you do after step one? And then if they react to that herb, how do you go to step two? This is where the hand holding is necessary. So, you know, when we talk about labs, I think it kind of devalues the art of medicine a little bit because you and I have so much artistry to what we do. And it's hard to translate that just with a lab test because
Yeah.
you know, anybody could start running labs. And like you said, we've seen 5, 10, 15 labs come in from previous practitioners, but they did nothing with it. So the real art is when you take the protocol, you take it with you and I are injecting confidence and we're
Yeah.
injecting motivation. I talked with a client this morning who she said that she came to me because she was so afraid of her gut symptoms. And she came to me out of fear. But now we have basically transformed that fear into empowerment and education. And the labs were a tool to help change that. So don't put all your eggs in this lab basket. They're still amazing. You and I still run them on everyone, but there's other stuff that's injected into that lab that really makes the magic happen.
Yeah, 100%. I think the hardest part too is you work on dealing with these stressors with patients. You fix their stress, you get their digestion better, you fix a lot of the microbiome, you knock down a lot of the bugs. Again, in the realm of candida or dysbiotic bacteria, it's still going to be there. You're never ever going to knock it out 100%. So there'll always be a small residual bit maybe lingering in the background, way beneath threshold. But if stress starts to come back or if people start to add too much food that's questionable into their diet, sometimes these things can come back. And the amount of flexibility, some kind of can follow the 80-20 principle. If they're right 80% of the time on things, 20% they have a little bit of flexibility. Some got to do 95-5, or some got to be 100, but just really try to make sure if they cheat, they still keep it grain-free, anti-inflammatory, etc. Like last night I went to True Food Kitchen for my birthday and I had some of their chocolate chip cookies, which inside the cookie, it's cassava and banana based. So that's great. So if I'm going to cheat, I'm going to try to do it in a way that's not going to cause me to get bloated or gassy or have any skin issues or, digestive problems.
Lady commented, Dr. J seems super energetic today. Yeah, he's a birthday boy. That's why. And he's feeling better.
Oh
And
yeah.
he's
Yeah. No
feeling
problem.
better. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
good.
Feeling good.
Another comment here. I wonder which lab test should I run? Uh,
Well, I would say just here out of the gates regarding labs, I don't want to name specific companies on these videos because if we change it in the future and someone just watches the video, that they may just go to the old one. So we'll put links down below. That way, if we decide to change things in the future, then you can just go look at the links down below. And so my staff typically will update this in the next 12 hours or so. Just check back at the end of the day or tomorrow, and we'll have everything in there. So just keep an eye on that. That way, if something changes, it'll be reflective in the description below.
But here's what we can say. We're still going to run a stool sample. Now, maybe
Yep.
that type or whatever
Cutting
technology
edge, some
changes
kind
over
of
the years.
stool testing is going to be great, right? Organic acid is going to be excellent. I love that because of every now and then I'll get a stool test coming back and the gut issues look pretty good. Like not too
Yeah.
bad, nothing crazy, but then you'll see a lot of yeast because sometimes you miss the yeast on the stool test. That's common. Or you'll see 3 or 4 markers like hippurate or benzoate or 2,3-phenylacetate, right? Or D-lactate really high. It's okay, good. I'm glad I had this extra net to catch it because the stool test missed it.
I had that last week, actually. I had a lady, and I kind of got freaked out at first. I was looking at the stool, and I'm like, oh my God, this lady has every gut symptom in the book. We get her stool test, and normally on page 3, page 4, you start to see some crazy stuff going on. This lady, it was clean. And I thought, oh man, like, is she crazy? I didn't really think that, but party's like, uh-oh, where's it coming from? Is this really her stool test? Then we get to the organic acids, and holy smokes. As you mentioned, oxyglutaric, arabinose, tartaric acid, tricarbolic acid, everything was off the charts. And I go, oh, thank you, Jesus. We have the answers on the organic acid. So that's why we love to run both urine and stool, because certain things get missed. And it's the synergy of the information from the labs. You may find a parasite on stool, and then you may find the candida on urine. Then you really go, oh, holy crap. That's where it's coming from. So let's hit this other one here. There was a person who was saying,
I want to hit one other question here. Anthony wrote to me there. Thanks, Anthony, for the great feedback. And again, guys, we're trying to interact with you guys that are on the chat live, and I want to answer questions live. So this is like, I call it functional medicine improv, right? You get your comedy shows. This is our functional medicine show. So I appreciate that. Thanks for the feedback, Anthony. And then Isabella writes in, waking up distended, right, in the morning. So with that, a lot of times you got to calm down a lot of the fermentables in the diet. If you're waking up distended in the morning, almost always there's a lot of fermentation happening in the gut and these gases are being produced. Now, there's a couple of variables that you can do to help that. One, you starve it out by reducing all the foods that feed that. 2, you have to be able to break down your foods, because even if it's good food, if you're not breaking it down well, it's gonna essentially have the ability to rot and rancidify and putrefy. So you got to make sure enzymes, acids, and potential bile salts are addressed, because HCl, hydrochloric acid, and bile salts, if you have low levels of that, those things in and of themselves are actually antimicrobial. They have a mild antimicrobial effect, not like oil of oregano, but they have a mild antimicrobial effect. So if you have like digestive distress and you have poor levels of these things, guess what? These bugs are more likely to grow. And of course, we have to come in there and do some killing, making assumptions that like, if you have a lot of distension, like there's no fiber, there's no raw vegetables, even though you read all these things, have this big salad, you could steam some of these things. You may want to look at low fermentable things. That's great. You may want to make sure your stress is good and you're chewing your food up really well, and you're, avoiding hydrating outside of an ounce or 2 of, water to swallow some supplements. So that's kind of your starting point. And if you want to reach out, Isabella, you feel free to use the link down below. You can reach out to Evan or I.
let's read the rest of her comment here, because I think it's helpful for people. So she said that she tested negative for SIBO. I'm guessing that might have been a breath test. And she said she's 21 years old and it affects her daily life. So when I hear 21-year-old female, a lot of bloating, as you mentioned, I think the veggies, I think cutting out leafy greens, no salads, maybe.
Or if you do it, keep them low FODMAP and steam it or saute it. Like, I'm pretty sure bok choy and kale, that's low FODMAP. If you sauteed that in some coconut oil or some ghee or some kind of a good animal fat, you'd probably be okay. But test it, right? I'm all about testing, not guessing.
True. So I think about hormones. I think, okay, she's 21, right? This is healthy fertility age. Is there some sort of issue with hormone imbalances? Are there estrogen dominance type issues as well? What about breast tenderness? What about PMS, irritability? Are there mood issues as well? Or is it just extremely distended belly?
Now, in the history, that's going to come out with a good history, because you're going to see it cyclically happen, typically premenstrual or typically ovulation. So a good history will fret that out. Let's assume it's every day. Hormones is probably not the root cause, but of course, we know, we've already talked about it, chronic digestive issues will eventually cause hormone problems because of all the inability to digest the nutrients to make the hormones over time.
Yeah, good point. And the bacterial overgrowth, which will crank up beta glucuronidase, so that creates the recirculation of
estrogen
hormones
dominance.
and toxins.
Yeah.
So maybe that. What about birth control too? Is that in the equation? I start thinking about that. So
Birth control pill definitely has an effect on alkalizing some of that tissue in the intestinal tract and the vaginal tract. That's why one of the big side effects that you see with like birth control pill is yeast infections, right? It's because it's shifting the pH. It's also creating a lot of nutrient deficiencies. So if you have birth control pill issues, it can definitely put you in that microbiome area where it kind of goes the wrong way there.
Yep, yep. So hopefully that helps. And then, as you mentioned, if you want to reach out, you can. Dr. J, justinhealth.com, me at evanbrand.com. With a stool and a urine and a good workup, we could probably get to the bottom of that. I would say that digestive issues are something that you and I have the most experience of out of anybody that I know, because all the people that have failed others, then they come to us. So
Absolutely. The hardest part too is once you kind of get on that straight and narrow, finding out how much latitude you have, right? Some people they may not be able to do dairy afterwards. Some may still have to be grain free. They can't even do rice or oatmeal, right? So some people they got to be a little bit more tighter on their diet. Some can be a little bit looser, and it's harder. The hardest thing I think is with kids because kids. I mean, I have a 2 and 4 year old boys, right? And most kids their age eat like crap. It is just like absolutely mortifying to see how most kids eat. And normal and typical are two different things, right? So people say, I want to be a normal kid. I want to eat like a normal kid. It's like, no, you want to eat like a typical kid. Like normal 60 years ago was a totally different diet than normal today, right? 60 years ago, everything was mostly organic. Kids ate relatively, whole foods. And there wasn't all the GMOs and all the crap and all the excess omega-6 fats and trans fats. And people were eating good proteins at every meal. And we had actually home cooked meals and home cooked dinners. That's totally different today, right? And so typical and normal are two different things.
yeah, not many seed oils or non-existent seed oils. Or go back a little further. Go back 5,000, 15, 20,000 years in the United States, even just a few hundred. You read the Native American stories. I mean, those kids were eating bison. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, you know what they were having? They were having bison. If it was a time where they maybe didn't get a kill, they had pemmican, which is going to be like a dried meat product. Maybe some, I know some tribes, they would integrate berries into it. But if your food has a brand to it, now there are some exceptions, like there are some really good companies that make bison meat and all that. But in
Beef
general,
jerky. Yeah, there's some good stuff. There's some decent paleo granola. If you can handle nuts and seeds, then that stuff's okay as well, for
But
sure.
in general, my point is if your food has a brand to it, it's probably some level of processed. Now, if you
Correct.
say a farm, like a farm name, I don't consider that a brand. I'm talking like Kellogg. That's a brand. If your food has a brand to it, it's probably not something good. I'm not looking at the brand of my wild blueberries. I guess technically they have a name or a store, but they're blueberries. So you
Mhm.
just got to think simply. And as you mentioned, long term, there may be dietary changes, but overall, I think a lot of people can get back to foods that they previously avoided or were previously afraid of. Not to mention people that are afraid of meat. So many people are afraid of red meat. We interview people all the time and they say, oh, I eat red meat a couple times a month. I'm like, a couple times a month? I eat red meat every day. I'm like, why? And they're, oh, well,
Mhm.
my cholesterol or my heart or my doctor said this. And so there's still so much programming. I think you and I forget. Now, I know you have TVs and you probably have some exposure to this, but in general, I don't have any exposure to pharmaceutical ads. And so I forget just how much indoctrination and programming of dietary information people have. And so part of the art of what we're doing too is just removing any of the historical programming they've had about certain foods. I think some people
Yep.
freak themselves out so much. They've been told a certain food is so bad for them. They go into it thinking, if I eat this steak, I'm going to have problems. And they literally will put so much stress and emotion into the worry of food that then drives further symptoms.
Yeah, I always start with you got to have a framework in how you analyze any data or any concept, right? So my first framework that I look at anything with is old foods don't cause new diseases, right? When you look at most of the diseases we have today, they're routinely Neolithic, right? They weren't at the same level that we saw 100 years ago, right? Obviously, we had different problems back then because we didn't have the same level of water sanitation, indoor plumbing, antibiotics, which, for like you get a major cut, you had an infection, you'd have antibiotics, you could die, right? So we have that. That's different. So Neolithic foods cause most diseases. And so when you look at good proteins and animal fats and these kind of things, they've been eaten for as long as you can go back. So those typically aren't going to be the problem, right? It's mostly going to be the processed foods, the excess omega-6. And also, the whole vegan bent, that's something that's not really supported by anthropological data. You look at the works of Weston Price, or you look at people that studied indigenous societies, almost always meat was consumed when it was available. The only societies that typically didn't consume meat were societies that didn't have access to it. And if you look at the works of Weston Price, when meat was accessible, it was typically consumed. It wasn't like, oh, let's just not consume it. It's typically they didn't have access to it. And when they did, they ate it. And so people that tend to do really good on a non-vegan diet are your ectomorphs. These are people that can handle lots of carbohydrate. It's impossible to do a vegan vegetarian diet for the most part and not be very, very high carbohydrate. And typically, you also got to plug in a lot of protein powders to do it well, whether it's free form amino acids, whether it's collagen or pea protein or rice protein or hemp protein. Most are having to plug in a lot of amino acids to get enough, especially if they're trying to put on muscle and be, on the fit side.
It's hard to be a vegan. It's easy to be a animal-based person. I'll tell you that. There's just a lot of hacking you have to do. So Isabella chimed back in. She was a little bit behind on the live stream, so she chimed in here. So here we go. We got some more evidence, guys. I hope you're having as much fun as we are, because this is like a on the fly functional medicine workup here. So she said, loss of period for 6 months as well. Mood issues like anxiety and racing heart upon waking, irritability, which is what I was thinking, some kind of hormone stuff. I'm a bit behind, but wanted to input that. So there we go.
Well, the problem with a lot of those symptoms, it requires me having to ask a very important question. I won't ask that question, but we'll just say the meat of that question begins with the letter V. And we'll just
Ooh.
let people linger on that. And Isabel, if you want to reach out, feel free. I think we've chatted in the past, so feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help you.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point and would make perfect sense, especially with the
Mm-hmm.
timeline here. I would be wanting to look at some blood work. Actually, I had a woman last week, 33 years old, loss of period, other issues. We ran her blood, elevated D dimer. That
Mm-hmm.
indicates breakdown of clotting. So we'll leave it at that for today. But mid
And
30s women should not be having elevated D dimer.
yeah, and we're speaking kind of like we are in a very discreet type of manner because we want to keep this information flowing to you. Okay, so people out there, hopefully you mostly get that, and you want to continue to see us on the air. That's our goal.
Here's another question. Then you and I can wrap this up here in a minute. So, can gut health issues cause high resting pulse and arrhythmias? Let me tell you my personal experience, and maybe we could chime in on the clinical side too. But when I had gut issues, when I had H. pylori, I was anxious. I had issues with my blood pressure. I had heart palpitations. I had panic attacks. I had all sorts of mood issues. I had heart issues. I had sleep issues. I had skin issues. So 100% gut issues can cause this.
Yeah, the bugs in and of themselves definitely can cause anxiety. So you can go type in, there's scientific studies, type in SIBO or H. pylori and anxiety. There's definitely mental health association connections with the two. Also, if you have digestive issues, you tend to have hydrochloric acid issues. When you have hydrochloric acid issues, you tend to not ionize minerals and absorb minerals optimally. The two big minerals that are intimately connected with your heart and heart rate and heart rhythm are potassium and magnesium. And then a lot of times people aren't getting sodium and chloride as well. So the electrolytes have to be looked at, and potassium and magnesium have to be looked at, and most don't get enough. You need 4,700 milligrams of potassium a day. Most get half that. And so I have a product called Potassium Synergy that does about 1,300 per 150 in magnesium or so side by side. It's really hard to get enough. Most supplements for potassium stink. They're like 50 or 100 milligram capsules. So you got to take like 15 or 20 capsules a day. So sometimes you need to plug in a supplement if you're having issues. I mean, you can go look at the most potassium rich foods, salmon, avocados, sweet potato. Those are really good options. Of course, some animal products as well are going to be right up there as well. And again, avocados have twice the amount of potassium as bananas. I know we're kind of a carb-centric society. If I say potassium, you're going to say bananas, right? But avocados have twice the amount.
Yep. Good call. Good call. So yeah, long story short, gut issues definitely can cause other issues. Mood issues are very common. Fatigue is also very common. And so that's going to affect neurotransmitters. So we would be looking at all that. We'd be looking at neurotransmitters, gut inflammation, secretory IgA. You can look at fecal fat. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that may affect the high resting pulse. Also, Seeing a lot of things right now with viruses and high resting pulse rate. So if
Yep.
there was a current infection, previous infection, pulse rate could be there. You mentioned potassium, herbals too.
Hydration, sodium chloride, and then your potassium, magnesium. Those are going to be your big ones out of the gates. And then also blood sugar. Some people, they really get into a stressed out state if they wait more than an hour or so to eat. And if you have digestion's a little wonky, you may want to start with something really simple like some gentle ginger tea or some collagen amino acids or just something really light and simple in the morning and some electrolytes even before that.
Yeah, yeah, good call. Sometimes, herbals, I might come in with like motherwort or passion flower, valerian, some kind of like calming
Calming.
tincture. Yeah.
Yeah, I always look at the nutrients first because the nutrients could be actually root cause, and the herbals will never be root cause, but they are a palliative supporting mechanism, right? It's like you can do passion flower or lemon balm, or you can do a benzo on the pharmaceutical side. It's like obviously the herbs are better, and then even before the herbs, the actual nutrients that may be deficient that are driving it.
Very good
Yep.
call.
But
Well, I'm ready
hey,
to wrap this up if you are.
herbs aren't going to have the side effects, so I'm always down with supporting something palliatively if they aren't going to have the side effects or any of the negative consequence like some of the meds may.
Yeah, well said.
Cool.
You ready to wrap this
Well,
up?
yeah, great chat with everyone here today. Glad everyone's on the chats interacting. We really appreciate it. Functional medicine improv is is our flow here. You guys want to reach out to Evan, evanbrand.com for Evan, Dr. J here, myself, justinhealth.com. We'll put links down below. If you're seeing it on YouTube, great, excellent. If you're listening to this on iTunes or any of the podcast places, there will be a video link below if you want to see us interacting as well. There's that as well. And phenomenal chatting. Anything else, Evan?
Yeah, if people want to chime in and they want to watch, if you guys are listening or if they're on my podcast, because we'll upload these on my show as well, and you're wanting to check us out here on video, give or take somewhere around 11 to 12 Eastern on Mondays on Dr. J Justin Health YouTube channel. So if you're wanting to look for us, join the party. Look up Justin on YouTube, Justin Health, Justin Marcagiani, Dr. J, something like that. You'll find him on there.
Yep.
And yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes too. So if you want to join the YouTube community, you can. There's 60-something thousand on there. So that's pretty cool.
Also on Rumble, also on BitChute, also on a couple other places. So we'll put the links on the website so you can go click on the banners, get the links. But Rumble's our new one that we're going to just to get more exposure, people.
And you're re-uploading the YouTube videos to there, right?
Yep, you got it.
No live function on there or anything yet?
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay, cool. All right, well, you guys take it easy. We look forward to helping you get your gut health back. Just stay patient and don't give up. So we'll see you next week.
Take care, y'all. Bye now.
Bye-bye.